Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another episode of Spoiler Sundays. So this is the time of the week where I take a look at all of the spoilers we had this past week and, well, talk about them. There were a couple of spoilers that I missed last week, so I'll cover them here as well. So there's just a lot of cards to talk about, so let's just dive right in. First up, starting with the cards that I missed last week, we have Snymon. So Snymon is another card that's coming out of the Imperial Starter deck, and I think this card is actually pretty good because it's acting similar to what Witchmon was doing from the Mastimon starter deck, where it's going to be acting as the security Digimon, and it has the nice on-play ability to pair up with the fact that it's going to be playing itself out of our security when it's checked in the security, because the on-play ability is basically a kogamon ability where we get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon. So that's just a pretty decent ability to have paired up with the security ability. I think it's more playable than kogamon in that respect, even though kogamon, if you are just hard playing it, is the better one of the two. It's just the fact that the security ability actually adds lots more depth and variety to how we could actually utilize this card, because this also could help set up our Jagresses, just because our Jagresses for Imperial actually care about our level 4s, and if we do just have a level 4 sitting on the field, it means we have an easy way to set up our Jagras. So I think this is a little bit better than Witchmon, and I think this is a little bit better than kogamon, so this just is looking to be a pretty decent card to be using all around for what the Imperial Dramon deck is trying to set up. Next up, we have Jewel Beamon. So Jewel Beamon is just, well, a vanilla card. There's not anything too special about it. It's just a level 5 that shares Myotismon stats from BT02, where it's 6 to hard play, 2 to Evo, 7000 DP, and I think this card for green doesn't really matter because we already have a whole bunch of good evolution abilities paired up with the fact that green has lots of level 5s that Evo for 2, so it's just another card to use, and it's just not a very interesting or exciting card. Next up, we have Halcymon. So Halcymon is another Armor Evolution Digimon. It has the Digivolution requirements of Evoing for 3 off of blue or off of a Hookmon for 2. So I do like the flexibility on the ways we could Digivolve it for being a 2-color Digimon. So that way it's just not completely acting as a easy card to transition into. So that way you could color swap and play various other colors. But I do like what this card is doing also as a whole, because it also has the Armor Release ability, acting as a very sticky Digimon, because when it would get deleted, then we just revert it back to the level 3, so that way we could try to Digivolve again and aggress with a different Digimon, or try to Digivolve again into another Halcymon, and use its when attacking ability, because its when attacking ability is actually pretty decent, allowing you to delete one of the opponent's level 3 Digimon. So having any form of removal is always good on our Digimon bodies, because that just allows us to interact with the opponent's field, and I do like what Halcymon is doing as a whole. Now, as far as the new spoilers that we got from this past week, we first have Hookmon. So Hookmon is exactly the type of card that I was afraid of, where he is just a 2-color Digimon with no real downside to running him. Most of the time you're going to want to run him because he could transition between blue and black relatively easily, and then you could then transition from any of those other colors to a completely different set of colors. So this just allows you to start trying to break the color pie even harder, just because of all of the transition Digimon we have in the game, and like I said, there's no real downside to running him because he evos for 2 off of blue or black, so you could go from like blue to black to red to yellow and so on and so forth. There's just a whole bunch of different things that you could do, all depending on the types of transitions that we're going to be getting and what we currently have. But on top of him being a very dangerous to play transitional Digimon, he also has an inheritable ability to pair up with the fact that he's 2-color, because why not? Where his inheritable ability is playing off of the blue aspect of the card, where he has the inheritable skill of when attacking, you get to discard 1 card from the bottom of the opponent's inheritable sources from one of their Digimon, so he's even allowing you to attack and pick off at your opponent's inheritable sources, and this ability isn't even limited to once per turn, so you get more added benefit for any Digimon that could multi-attack, on top of just trying to pick off the opponent's inheritable sources as a whole, just to try to get rid of some problematic abilities that they might have on their lower levels. So this card is an absolutely insane card to think about utilizing, and I'm very cautiously optimistic about how they're going to implement various other 2-color Digimon going forward. Next up, we have Catch Mememon. So I've never really been a huge Mememon fan, and this card definitely isn't converting me into being a Mememon fan because it has a when digivolving ability where you get to return up to 4 cards with Mememon in their name from your hand or trash to the bottom of your deck in any order, and then if you return at least 3 or more cards this way, then you get to de-digivolve 1 on one of the opponent's Digimon. So I think this is just a very, well, bad and underwhelming card. Obviously, the Mememons kind of want to be in the trash because some of them are playing with the decoy mechanic, some of them are just generically decent cards that you could consider running, but I don't think any Mememon is like overtly like good enough to warrant just running versus some of the other options that we have in black. So I think this is just a pretty not super good card to be running, especially for the payoff of just de-digivolve 1. We have easier and better ways to do that on various other Digimon where we don't really need to use this ability at all. So I think this card is not very good and as a result will not see a lot of play, and it's unfortunate that black gets yet again another dud card. Next, we have Freemon. So Freemon is going to be the yellow Digitama of the set, and Freemon's inheritable ability is pretty okay. It's not amazing, but it's not awful considering yellow doesn't have a whole lot of ways of DP boosting their Digimon, so having a Digitama that actually has a easier way to DP boost than some of the others is always nice because its inheritable ability states that during your turn, while you have 3 or more security, this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP, supporting more of that early game aggression, considering that's when you're actually going to have 3 or more security, but yellow has very easy ways to control and manipulate their own security to try to ensure that they're at least going to be at that 3 security threshold to trigger various other abilities. I do like the fact that they are trying to play with 3 or more versus 3 or less because 3 or less is a little bit easier of a condition to meet than 3 or more, but regardless, just the fact that they are playing around with what yellow is doing and could do is always a nice thing, even though I don't think this card is going to see a whole lot of play because we do just have a better Digitama already in the game. Next up, we have Kogamon. So Kogamon is another 2-color Digimon similar to what we saw with Hookmon, where it is kind of making me more worried about the current pacing and direction of the game with these 2-color Digimon, because like I stated before, too many of these could actually start ruining color identity because this card is a level 4 2-color Digimon that could digivolve off of purple and green and counts as both a purple and a green Digimon at all times, means that we could go from something like purple to green to blue to something else, and to me that just is very, very dangerous because at that point, what is the purpose and reason why we're even running colors? But regardless, this is still just a very good card to be running similar to Hookmon just because you're using him primarily for that 2-color aspect, and on top of that, he actually does have a really good inheritable ability of giving whatever Digimon he's digivolving into retaliation. So we saw something very similar to this card in terms of the stats and his level in the form of Devimon all the way back in BT02, except this card's even better than Devimon because not only does this have 1 less play cost, and count as an additional color, it just shares that same ability that could be used with multiple other Digimon than just semi-hard locked to purple. So this is just looking to be a very good Digimon to be using, and I'm curious to see where they're going to be going with more 2-color Digimon because, again, I'm going to be very cautiously optimistic on my opinions of it because I already am not a super huge fan of it, but I do like some of their implementations that they already had, and I don't like stuff like this. But that's just my own personal bias. Next up, we have a new version of TK. So this TK is a blue tamer, and he is going to be acting as another memory fixing tamer, which isn't a bad thing. The more options they have in terms of their memory fixers, the better. So that way you could actually start trying to diversify what cards you're actually going to be using. And even though I do think Davis is just the better tamer to be playing over TK, TK is still a pretty good option in case you can't get your hands on Davis. So as I stated before, this is a memory fixing tamer, where if your memory is ever going to be less than 3, he'll just hard set it to 3 at the start of your turn. So that's pretty good because a lot of what you're going to be doing in Digimon is based off of having 3 memory. So always being at 3 memory is just that good and that important. And on top of that, he also has a nice ability where it actually triggers on the opponent's turn, where when your opponent's Digimon attacks one of your blue Digimon, then you get to suspend this tamer to draw 1 card. So even though you don't want your Digimon to be attacked into, at the very worst for doing kind of what blue wants to be doing, which is just attacking anyway, you get to draw a card off of them attacking your Digimon, which is pretty good because blue likes to have lots of cards in their hand. They already have lots of different ways of drawing cards, so this is just another way of drawing cards, and I think it's pretty decent. I do think Davis is just a better tamer overall still, but the fact that you do have another tamer that's a memory fixing tamer that could help fix your hand is still just nice to think about. Next up, we have a new version of Patamon. So this is another blue Patamon, and this Patamon can digivolve off of a level 2 blue or a level 2 yellow. So Patamon in the set obviously is going to be playing around with those 2 colors, and he has this nice inheritable skill that we've saw before on a couple of other Digimon, where at the end of the turn, you could DNA digivolve this Digimon and your other Digimon into a Digimon from your hand by paying its DNA Digivolution cost. So we've seen this ability before. The whole intended purpose on using this ability is to just have it in the stack, so that way when you hard play a Digimon, you could DNA Digivolve those 2 Digimon at the end of the turn. So it's just allowing you to actually utilize your Jagras or DNA Digivolution Digimon that much more efficiently, which is pretty good, considering a lot of them have very strong abilities and can do various different things depending on the Jagras and abilities you're pairing up with it. Next, we have a new version of Angemon. So Angemon is going to be another 2-color Digimon, and this is kind of the stat line, well, at least the evolution stat line, that I would have preferred to see Hookmon and Kogamon have, where they evo for 3, but Angemon actually warrants him evoing for 3 because he has a native ability and an inheritable ability. So his native ability is during your turn, when this Digimon would digivolve, if you have 3 or fewer cards in your security, then you get to recover 1. So that's pretty interesting of an ability to have, considering Yellow already wants to play a lot with recovery, and you could basically pre-recover and then when Digivolve actually recover. So that's just really interesting on what you could do and how much recovery you could put in your deck. And on top of that, he has a nice inheritable ability where when attacking, if you have 3 or fewer cards in your security, then you get to return one of the opponent's level 3 Digimon back to their hand. So it's acting as some good removal for low-level Digimon, which isn't a bad thing considering low-level Digimon can be pretty powerful at this stage in the game, just because we have armor evolution to be working with. So they could just delete the armor evolution, and then you have to figure out a way to delete the Digimon a second time or get rid of the Digimon a second time. So this could be a good way at getting rid of the Digimon a second time. But most of the time, you're just going to try using this card because he is a blue and yellow 2-color card, so that way you could just enable some of your blue and yellow synergies. Next up, we have Yuji. So Yuji is a black tamer that has a play cost of 3 and is interacting with X antibodies. So I was expecting that we would get a little bit of X antibody support in the set, but I wasn't expecting this. So he has the nice ability where during your turn, when your X antibody Digimon is moved from the raising area to the battle area, then we get to gain 1 memory and draw a card. So we saw this ability on the Tai and the Mat all the way back in BT06, and those were already very good tamer cards to be using for those respective colors in those respective decks. So I think because of that, Yuji is also looking to be a pretty good tamer to be using, and on top of that, he has an upside where during your turn, when your black X antibody type Digimon attacks, you get to suspend this tamer to add 1 X antibody type Digimon from your hand to the bottom of its inheritable sources. So this is just playing off of what X Antibody already wanted to do, where it's just trying to slowly build up its stack and gain lots of powerful abilities and trigger various abilities. So this is just playing exactly into what X Antibody is trying to do, and I really, really like him for that purpose. But on top of him, we also get a new line of X antibody type Digimon, or at least I'm going to be guessing it's a new line, considering they were in the same manga together, and they both have X antibody type Digimon, and we're kind of like the good guys of the manga. So we have Ryudamon as his partner Digimon to be playing around with for the X antibody deck. So what this card is doing is he has the nice on play ability where we get to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck, and then we get to add 1 X antibody type Digimon and 1 UG from among them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. So he's just your classic digging card. We already have lots of good X antibody type Digimon he could grab, and we already know what UG is doing, so I really like what this card is doing. And on top of that, he also has an inheritable skill where during both players' turns, while this Digimon has an X antibody type Digimon, then it gains the Decoy Black ability. So I'm not exactly sure if I'm thrilled with it having the Decoy ability, but I guess that could be pretty useful depending on what we're Digivolving into and how the deck wants to play with all of these new cards. Next, we have a new black option to be playing around with for the X antibody type deck. So I'm not even going to try pronunciating its name. I'm going to be butchering it horribly if I did. But what this card is doing is it has the main ability of De-Digivolve 1 on one of the opponent's Digimon. Then we get to place an X antibody type Digimon from our hands to the bottom of one of our black X antibody type Digimon to destroy one of the opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 4 or less. So this is kind of like looking back at the good times, except more X antibody support, and I think that's pretty decent considering the De-Digivolve 1 is kind of irrelevant, and we're trying to actually just delete the Digimon, but again, if you're playing an X antibody type deck, then it's actually pretty decent because you could shrink the Digimon, then delete it, so it's nice to have, and it also has the security ability to De-Digivolve 1 on one of the opponent's Digimon and to delete one of their Digimon with a play cost of 4 or less. So again, it's just a pretty solid card to be using for the X antibody type deck. I don't know exactly if this is what they want, but it's definitely something for them to think about. Next, we have Oryumon. So Oryumon is another X antibody Digimon for us to be working with. He is a black level 6 that has some very decent stats. Evos for 4, hard plays for 12, it has 12,000 DP. We've seen that stat line before, but the fact that he actually has 2 native abilities and an inheritable ability make him a really good card to think about utilizing for the X antibody deck. So what this card is doing is he has 2 native abilities. His first one is a when Digivolving ability, where we get to place a Digimon with X antibody in its type from our hand underneath this Digimon to the bottom of his inheritable sources, and then if we do, we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 7 or less. So, you know, just doing what X antibody wants to do, add to his inheritable sources, and having a very good removal type ability attached to it is always nice to see on black Digimon, because that's kind of what black was lacking before, was just some solid forms of removal. And then its second ability native to it is during your turn once per turn. When you place a Digimon underneath this card's Digivolution source, then this Digimon gains plus 2,000 DP and can't be deleted by your opponent's card effects until the end of the opponent's next turn. So not only is he going to be deleting one of the opponent's Digimon, he's going to prevent himself from being deleted while gaining DP. So I think this is going to be a very powerful card for X antibody to be playing around with, just based off of those 2 abilities alone. But on top of that, like I mentioned before, he even has a third ability as an inheritable ability, where at the end of the attack once per turn, if this Digimon has Alphamon in its name, then you get to unsuspend it, alluding to us getting the super form of Alphamon. I don't know if that's actually going to be in this set or the next set, but we should be expecting a new Alphamon coming soon. Next, we have Black Gatomon. So Black Gatomon is another level 4 that is supporting 2 colors, and it has a evolution cost of 3 on yellow and purple, which is kind of more of what I wanted to see, except this, again, warrants it for having 2 abilities, one native to it and one inheritable. So its ability native to it is Rush, which is extremely powerful, considering both yellow and purple have multiple different ways of being able to play this card. So that's already just making it a very strong card to be utilizing, just because of that rush ability to just be able to play it for free and attack with it right away, allowing you to put some extra aggression into your game plan. And on top of that, it has the inheritable skill of Retaliation, on top of being counted as both purple and yellow, which is just very, very powerful because we have lots of synergy between purple and yellow, and purple and yellow can do lots of very powerful things. So I think this is a pretty good card, and even though its evolution cost is exactly where I wanted it to be, it's just still a very powerful card, because most of the time you're going to be ignoring actually evolving into this card, and you're just going to try setting up in your trash so that way you could res it for free or play it for free from your hand in some way, shape, or form, because that's what those 2 colors are trying to do. Next up, we have a new Vmon. So this Vmon is following in the same footsteps as all of the other O2 Digimon, at least the main O2 Digimon, where he could evo off of blue and green, which isn't to be a surprise to anyone, considering that's just what Vmon's done in the past, so there's no real reason to change him now. And on top of that, he has an on-play ability where we get to reveal the top 4 cards of our deck, add one 2-color Digimon that has blue among them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom of our deck in any order. So I think this is a very powerful Digimon to be playing around with, just because a lot of the 2-color combinations are stemming off of blue. So we already have a 2-color Digimon that supports blue-red, blue-yellow, blue-black, and blue and green. So there's just a lot of different cards that this card can pick, making this card a really good card to be playing, on top of the fact that he is a Vmon for all of the armor evolutions and any other Vmon-based synergies. Next up, we have 2 more vanilla cards, where it's just a level 5 that evos for 2, hard plays for 7, 8000 DP, nothing special there, and where it's just your classic vanilla 2-drop, where it's just a 2 to play, 0 to evo, 3000 DP. So nothing special or interesting going on here, so it's nice to see that we're just getting more Digimon with similar stat lines that we could possibly think about using for various different purposes. We got Ophanimon Fall Down Mode. So Ophanimon is one of the big cards that's coming out of the set, and this card is looking to be pretty strong. So what this card is doing is it is a level 6 2-color Digimon, purple and yellow is what it's supporting, no shocker there, and it could Digivolve for 4 off of a level 5 purple or yellow Digimon, or you could Digivolve this on top of an Ophanimon for 2. So there's just a lot of different ways you could utilize this card based on its evolutions and the colors it's playing with, and on top of all of that, it also has a when Digivolving ability, where if this Digimon has a purple Digimon in its inheritable source, then we could delete one of the opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon, and then when this card has a yellow Digimon in its inheritable source, then we get to recover 1. So this is just a very powerful ability to be playing around with, because we already know based on Mastimon, there's just a lot of support for purple and yellow, so we do have multiple 2-color Digimon that fit within purple and yellow. We have Jogresses and a whole bunch of other stuff to be supporting this card as well, so it's not like that when Digivolving ability to get both of the effects off is going to be very hard at all. And on top of that, it also has an on delete ability where we get to play a purple or yellow Digimon that has a play cost of 4 or less from our trash for free. So this is just doing a very classic purple style thing to just try to res some of our fallen Digimon. And we do have lots of good targets that we could pick from. Obviously, just within this video, we saw Black Gatomon that this could res, and it has Rush, so the whole idea is we could swing with this card if it gets deleted in security. We could res the Black Gatomon, and then Black Gatomon can get another swing off. So that's just a quick example of what this on-delete ability can do, and there's just lots of various other things that you could do within yellow and purple and their on-play abilities that can make this card really, really strong on top of its first ability and whatever it was doing. Its Evo for 2 on top of an Ophanimon is kind of interesting. I don't know if there's going to be another Ophanimon in the set. We do have only 2 Ophanimons in the game. One is a promo Ophanimon that it just has some solid removal abilities attached to it, so it's not like it's that bad of an Ophanimon to use, and then the other Ophanimon is definitely a lot weaker, where it came out in BT08, and it's just a classic on delete ability to just tuck it into our security. So it's really interesting to see what other Ophanimons we could possibly get in the game, if we are going to be getting any, but outside of that, I don't necessarily think we need to evolve on top of an Ophanimon for 2, considering we do have lots of ways to just gain additional memory to make this card efficient to evo into for both purple and yellow. And then the last card that we got spoiled this past week is going to be Flame Hellscythe. So Flame Hellscythe is a purple-yellow option, so we do have to have both colors on the field in order to use this option, but again, with all of the 2-color Digimon, I don't think that's going to be very hard to do at all, so I'm expecting this card to be absolutely insanely powerful for being a 6-costed option. So what this card is doing is it has the main ability of one of your opponent's Digimon gets minus 6000 DP for the turn, and then you get to play one purple or yellow Digimon with 6000 DP or less from your trash for free. So this is actually a really powerful ability just because we do have lots of Digimon this can target. It's targeting DP, not level, so we could even use this card to bring back a level 5 to then Digivolve again. So we do have something like Sirenmon to use to bring back this card. We have lots of Rush Digimon in purple that we could use this card with, so this is already looking to be a very powerful card to set up. On top of the fact that it also has some nice built-in removal in the form of DP reduction, so it's even more powerful than just straight up deleting the opponent's Digimon. So this is just a very strong card already, with the added benefit of having its security activate its main ability. So even when it's coming out of the security, you get to just use this card for free, and that's still just very, very powerful because it could do two very strong things. So this is looking to be a very good card to be using, and my first knee-jerk reaction is going to be playing it with like Plutomon or off of Plutomon, as long as you could set up both purple and yellow on your field, which I don't think is going to be very hard at all. So there's just lots of different things that you could do with this card just based on what little information we have and how easy it is to actually set up these two color combinations. But that's kind of it for all of the spoilers we had this past week. There was quite a lot of them. Some of them were more exciting than others, but for the most part, I am cautiously optimistic on the direction of these two color cards. I think like the high-end stuff, two color combinations, is fine, just because it allows you to actually utilize various different tools on your low end and want to incentivize you using different tools on your low end to try to make that mega even stronger. But I think like these transition Digimons in the level 4s and level 5 slots could be a little bit problematic if they do too much of it, and if it's done incorrectly, I think that it could put the game in risk of losing its whole color identity, which is a huge aspect of the game that I really don't want to see go, considering the game already has a very loose interpretation on how to play colors in the game already because of how the memory system works as a whole. So I think like I'm going to be cautiously optimistic and hope they really don't abuse and overuse two color Digimon like we're starting to see. I think like the armor Digimon are kind of like neat and a good way of using two colors. So I'm kind of mixed on how I feel about it because I know they can do it right, and I also know they could very easily screw things up. So again, I'm going to be going into two colors very cautiously optimistic, and I'm curious to see what else the set has to offer, considering there's still just a lot of things we don't know about what's going to be in the set. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.